Greetings everyone and welcome back to another video. I have something a little different for you today. I normally don't do build videos, but I decided to do one for my Advent calendar month here. A brand new video every day in December leading up to and including Christmas Day. And if you've been watching so far, you'll know I did a re-review of the Vengeance, which is a very popular ship that's been around for a while. And if you've also been watching Star Trek Online videos on YouTube, you'll know that we cannot stop talking about torpedoes for the last year, and I imagine a lot of you are sick of it. So I decided to take a break from the usual stuff and do a beam build for the Vengeance, and I wanted to show that off to you today. And this may not be the best ship in the game, and this may not even be the best build you can use on the Vengeance, but that's okay. We're just here to have some fun. So let's go ahead and get into it here. And I decided to go for phasers because I think phasers and disruptors are my two favorites, but this is a Federation ship, so phasers are a bit more fitting. Obviously, you can't do a beam overload build without beams. So I'm mostly using the advanced phaser beam arrays, which come from the Miracle Worker flight deck carrier, the Discovery Constitution. But you can also unlock these from the Legendary version if you have the 10th Anniversary Legendary Bundle. And so I have 6 of those on here. And the reason why I didn't use 8 of them is because I also have the Terran Task Force Phaser Beam Array, which the Terran Task Force weapons generally, if you can get them in your energy type, are the best energy weapons in the game. So you want to use that if you can, although if you wanted to go any beams, it doesn't really matter as long as they're all the same energy type, all phaser, all disruptor, whatever. So just use whatever you want, fleet stuff or anything. It doesn't really matter too much. And then I have the Trilithium Omni for the 2-piece because it does give some firing cycle haste, and this is free mission rewards, so it's definitely something you can go out and pick up. And if you're doing a phaser build, it's a nice little 2-piece to have. The Omni is okay, the console is okay, and you get a good set bonus. And then for the deflector, I am using the Elite Fleet Intervention Protomatter Deflector. There might be a better one, but it's an okay one because it does give crit severity and crit chance, so it's still good even on a build like this. And then we have the Prevailing Innervated Impulse Engine. You guys have seen this stuff a million times. It's the same 4 things. You already know what it is. So this is for the speed boost, and then the 2-piece Discovery for the hull regeneration. So basically that's it. The deflector is here for the crit chance and severity. The impulse engine is here for the speed boost, and the warp core and shields are here for the hull regen. And then for devices, I have some energy amplifiers, which are going to give us some bonus energy weapon damage, and deuterium surplus for some extra maneuverability. I did upgrade this to tier 6X, so in the universal console slot I have my Lorca's custom fire control, 3.9% crit chance, weapon power, which is actually useful for us because we're doing an energy weapon build today, and shield penetration, quite a bit of shield penetration skill. Now I could have run a torpedo. A very popular thing these days is to put a single torpedo on your energy weapon builds. If I had done the dark matter one, I would have gotten the 2-piece bonus, or I could have done the enhanced biomolecular. I could even run a small torpedo package with subspatial warheads and whatnot, but I don't like doing that. If I'm going to do a beam build, I want it to be a pure beam build and to just really focus on that energy weapon damage, because my goal here is not to do the most damage possible. It's to have fun using beams, which is a very Star Trek thing. Normally when you watch Star Trek, they're using beams, and occasionally they'll fire a torpedo. They're not just vomiting torpedoes out. So down here in the engineering consoles, I have the Domino. And one thing you're going to notice with this is that it's an unconventional systems-themed build, which normally you hear about for other builds, but it works great for any build that has a lot of universal consoles with console clickies. And so there are a few that have good phaser buffs and that are also have good clickies. So we have a lot of clicky consoles on this build. The Domino gives us 15% Cat 1 phaser damage and some accuracy. Accuracy does help. And then, of course, it does have a clicky, which is super powerful. Cat 2 damage, recharge speed for bridge officers, and 25% firing cycle haste. So excellent clicky, and we would like to keep that up as much as we can. Here's the reinforced armaments. That's the other mission reward that pairs up with the Omni. And that's going to give us some power transfer rate, which is good for energy weapons, and some hull restoration and capacity. And then the two-piece bonus here is going to give us 5% firing cycle haste for energy weapons and some flight speed. So those are pretty good set bonuses. And then I have the console that actually comes with the ship, which gives 19% cooldown reduction on captain abilities, which is good for us today. Normally for an engineer, that's not the most important thing in the world, but the captain abilities for engineering are good for energy weapons, and we'll talk about those later, but it helps. We do have intelligent agent attaché on here as well, but it is a nice little bonus. Plus we get extra maximum weapon subsystem power, which gives us the tiniest little bit of extra final damage multiplier. It does have a clicky, which does some phaser damage, and this damage is buffed by our phaser damage buffs, so it does a decent amount of little damage there. Then we have the weaponized helical torsion, which you can also get from the legendary bundle, and it has 15% phaser damage and 15% crit severity, which is very, very nice. And it has a hold chance on the clicky, which is very good because we're also using the Tholian web spinner array. So it is a point-blank AoE that also has a chance to hold the targets. Then we have the Tholian web spinner array, and this comes from a event reward. So if you don't have it already, you might not be able to get it. But it does extra physical and Tetrion damage, which doesn't really apply to us. Extra control expertise, which isn't really all that good for us. There's one small way in which it's useful for us, but we'll see that later. But the big thing about this one is against held foes, we get 50% Cat 2 damage. So anything that helps give us a hold effect is also good as well. Plus the passives on this are just really nice as well. Then we have the DPRM. I don't really think I have to explain that one. And then we have approaching agony, 15% phaser damage plus a 1.5% crit chance. And it has a clicky, which also has a chance to do a hold, as well as reducing their damage resistance rating and doing some phaser damage. So it's pretty good, and it's definitely going to help us out. And then in our tactical console slots, as you might expect, it's just a bunch of locators, so we get the phaser damage and the crit chance. For the hanger pets, I would normally use, if I was just doing solo content, I would use the drones that come with the ship because they're good for roleplay and they're pretty good damage dealers. But if I'm going to do team content, then I'm going to use a pet that does not have a torpedo, just to be respectful of other people who are trying to do torpedo stuff. So I do have some Elite Universe shuttlecraft on here, so I can do team content. And let's go ahead and take a look at the traits here. And this is probably not the optimal configuration, but I have Adaptive Offense, which is good for crit chance and severity. It's crit chance that turns into severity. Beam Barrage, and actually I don't have Fleet Coordinator or Point Blank Shot on here. That's probably good ones I could use, but I tend to do more solo content, so I don't have Fleet Coordinator on here. Beam Barrage is going to give us some bonus damage. Then Fragment of AI Tech gives us some Cat 1 damage based on our control expertise. So earlier I said the control expertise wasn't helping us. It is helping us a tiny bit by giving us a little bit of Cat 1 damage from this trait. We have Intelligent Agent Attaché, which is going to help cool down our captain abilities. And our captain abilities are pretty useful on an engineer for energy weapons. Not as useful as tactical captain, of course, but we get 25 all power levels for 30 seconds, plus 25 max all power, and that the max all power is what really matters there, because weapon power gives you a final damage multiplier, so having extra max power gives us more damage, the best kind of damage boost you can get. Best category, I should say. Nadion aversion gives us negative 150% weapon power cost for 30 seconds. And then we have intrusive energy redirection, which is going to give us up to 50% Cat 2 damage based on how many targets we hit with it. So it's these three abilities are a nice little boost, and we'll be able to use them more often with all this captain captain ability reduction that we have on the ship. We have Inspirational Leader. Is probably, I think this is one of those traits that's really, really solid. I tend to use it a lot because it's really well-rounded. It doesn't hone in on one thing in particular because it gives you a whole bunch of different skill points. Like for the whole skill tree, almost every skill it hits. And so you're getting a little bit of everything, a little crit chance, a little cat 1 damage, a little bit of hull capacity, a little bit of, this, a little bit of that. So you're getting a lot of little buffs across the board, and I like that. It's very appealing to me. We got Symbiotic Ice, which is going to add 6% of beam weapon damage as cold damage. And if you're not going to use it on a build like this, you may as well not ever use it. So I'm using it because I want to. And it does add extra damage. Then we've got Boimler. I have a whole video on Boimler. This is our main cooldown reduction for the ship. I didn't really go into extra cooldown reduction, but this is really strong. And if you want to know more info, you can go watch the video I did about it. Superior beam training, of course, 7.5% Cat 2 beam damage. Terran targeting systems, 15% crit severity, which is very nice. It does have a maneuverability debuff, but that's not the end of the world. It's definitely worth it for that crit severity. And then unconventional systems, which is kind of the theme of this build here. And whenever you use a control bridge officer ability, you get 7% recharge on universal consoles. So it's going to cool down all 6 of our console clickies, which is really great. And since we have 8 control abilities, it's basically going to cut the cooldown of our consoles in half, which is really, really nice. In practice, it won't be quite that much, but on paper, it's going to cut them in half, which is really great. And then for starship traits, we have emergency weapon cycle. Probably don't have to explain that one. They're all a lot of firing cycle haste here. That's firing cycle haste. Overpowered and overgun from the legendary Defiant, more firing cycle haste. Calm before the storm, more firing cycle haste and survival. I went with Heart of Soul. There are definitely better traits I could use. I have better traits I could use, but again, it specifically gives phaser damage and firing cycle haste. If I'm not going to use it on a build like this, then I may as well never use it, so I wanted to use it. Then we have Super Weapon Ingenuity, which I have a tier list video. I don't know if it's going to come out before or after this one because I'm recording them all in advance, but this is really the big one, right, for beam overload, because it extends the duration of beam overload in order to get 100% uptime or very, very close to it, versus just like 2/3 uptime. So this is a critically important, and it comes from a Lobby ship. And then I went with preferential targeting. There are a couple of choices here. The Hush Knock trait can give you 25% Cat 2. This one gives you 100% Cat 1. There's lots of beam overload traits actually, so you have a lot to choose from, where you could just use a generic crit chance or whatever kind of trait. And like I said before, there are people who are using a single torpedo, so they might swap a couple of these weaker ones out for a couple torpedo traits, and that would probably improve the output of the ship, but it's just not as fun in my opinion. So this is just going to give us a bunch of Cat 1 damage. And in order to get it, we have to have Beam Fire at Will or Cannon Scatter Volley, which I only have one of. I only have Scatter Volley. I don't have Fire at Will, because obviously if I had Fire at Will on the ship, it would screw up my beam overload. So it's sort of like you pair it up. You use Cannon Scatter Volley for beam overload, and you use Fire at Will if you want to do rapid fire. And then for our space reputation traits, it got unslotted again, because it just keeps getting, every time I put it on, it keeps unslotting it, which is magnified firepower. If you find you're having problems with just Boimler, and you have a space reputation trait to spare, and you can't afford the duty officers, you can get chronocapacitor array. That's not a bad way to help fill in the gaps. But this gets unslotted constantly. I don't know why. This is like the 6th time I've had to put it back on here. And I saved the loadout too. But anyway, we got crit chance, crit severity, more crit chance. Energy refrequencer is one I always like for energy weapons because it's really good healing. And then magnified firepower is just Cat 2 damage. Now let's go ahead and save that again. It says there is no changes because the loadout has magnified firepower in there, but it still keeps unslotting. So, go figure. Anyway, that's our traits. And let's go ahead and take a look at our bridge officer stations. And we have Override Subsystem Safeties 3. That's going to give us max weapon power, which is going to translate into final damage multiplier. Then we have Emergency Power to Weapons 2. There are ways to fit a higher rank on here that I didn't want to, and that's going to trigger emergency weapon cycle and give us weapon power. Emergency power to engines for speed and to trigger the emergency con hologram. Then we have beam overload, which is what the build's about, and cannon scatter volley to trigger preferential targeting. I could have put something better than tactical team in here, but it does give you some training skill, which will give you a tiny bit of Cat 1 damage, and then it will also redistribute your shield, so it's not the worst thing. You could probably use Chemocide, or there's lots of things you could put in here. And then we just have 8 unconventional systems procs. We got EMP probe. We've got, this is a temp op seat, so we've got chronometric inversion field and Heisenberg amplifier. We've got tractor beam, even though it's not triggering rapid emitting armaments, it's still a control bridge officer ability. We've got photonic shockwave, we've got scramble sensors, and we've got jam targeting sensors. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, do I only have 7? I thought I had 8. 6, no, 5, 6, 7. Okay, we only have 7. Still pretty good though. We have 7. We could have fit another one on here if we really, really wanted to make it work, but so we have plenty of unconventional systems procs. And then for duty officers, nothing too fancy. I just have some crit severity, emergency or energy weapon officers. I've got this warfare specialist because I didn't really have anything better, emergency con hologram, and then I've got this 41 of 47 for TAC, gives a chance to reduce temp ops cooldown, and then for temporal it has a chance to reduce tactical bridge officer cooldown, and this is just here as a fail-safe for Boimler, just to help out a little bit, and so at least those will get cooled down, and then they can trigger Boimler again to get the cycle going. And that's it. That's the build. So just want to fire off our universal consoles as much as we can, cool them down with unconventional systems, and just spam a lot of energy weapon damage, and that's it. And do it all in style because it's a very stylish ship. So let's go ahead and go do an ISA really quick, and I'll see you there. Okay, we're about ready to go here, and let's just make sure that we have our traits unslotted and all that, because that would be very annoying. All right, it seems to be intact for now, but you can never really quite trust. You can't really. Oh, we don't have our pets out, so start getting the pets going. And let's go ahead and get moving here. Cool down our piloting is not too good here. Oh, let's keep it moving here. All right, console's already coming back up again, some of them anyway. And I'm going to whip back around here. We want to get the gateway here. DPRM is back up. Gateway's down. Get the attack cube. Domino's already getting ready to come back up. Captain abilities coming back around. More consoles. And we're done. All right. See you in the parse. Okay, and we're here at the parse, and it looks like we did 167K. I was kind of hoping we would break 200K, but you know, for an ISA pug in the random queue, I don't think that's too bad. And it took 120 seconds, so it lasted a long time. And let's go ahead and take a look at the DPS chart. Looks like we were picking up damage at the end, which makes sense because that's when we're on the gateway and the tactical queue. Had some pretty nice spikes over 400K here. But the thing I'm interested in is the downtime. So if we take a look here, we had some downtime between 10 and 20 seconds and 40 and 45. So we probably could have improved our DPS if we had just shortened those gaps there. You don't want gaps in your damage chart. Let's go ahead and take a look at the player combat report. And this is a beam overload build, and it looks like a beam overload came through. Got 101K for the advanced phasers, 20 for the Terran Task Force, and another 10 for the Omni. So that's about 125K of our damage came from beam overload 3. So that's a good sign. That's what the build was supposed to do, and it output the majority of the damage. Got about 13K from the pets, which is almost entirely from the shuttlecraft, which is not bad for a single hangar bay. Symbiotic Ice performing really well. 7K for a personal space trait, that's pretty good. Chain Web Projection is just amazing. Not only did it do 6K, but you also don't get to see all of the bonus damage that you got against those held targets. So that's a really excellent console if you have it. I think it's probably just good for almost every build. And then, you know, the phaser arrays and all that, when they weren't on beam overload, did okay as well. And everything else was pretty minimal. But yeah, so that's it, guys. That's my phaser build for the Vengeance. I hope you enjoyed it. There's going to be more videos to come here in December, so subscribe so you can see those when they come out. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.